Welcome back to the 3D Design Care video. In this one, we're going to do a project. It's a parametric bracelet builder. So we've covered a lot of this in other videos, little pieces here, but I wanted to put it all together and give you a nice builder for bracelets since we don't have one built into the program. So you can make your own. The first thing I did was I kind of drew out and set up my bracelet sizes. So I have all the numbers for the math that I'm going to need all kind of pre-laid out. One thing I want to pay attention to is notice the difference between the height and the width of the bracelet is a difference of 13 millimeters, and that's consistent for each size. So that makes this possible that we only have to worry about changing the height. The width will always be 13 millimeters wider. So let's keep that in mind when we're building our bracelet builder. So I'll move that off to the side. And let's get started. So in the jeweler's bench, we're going to choose the ring size builder. We don't have a bracelet size builder, but we're going to use this because we can set this to any custom diameter. It doesn't have to be ring sizes. So go ahead and choose that. And you can see I've already kind of set this up the last time I was working on this. But what we want to do is set up ring size as custom. And so we can type in the millimeter. And we're going to type in 50 millimeters. That's going to be our small size for the height. And we're going to turn off the top plane. We don't need that for this project. The number of points we'll leave at default, and we'll leave the starting point at the bottom. Again, that doesn't matter too much for this project. Validate that. Okay, so that gives us our height. For the width, we need a width that is 13 millimeters larger. We're going to use the outline for that, ring outline. So we're going to select the ring size builder and choose the ring outline. And then for the path or the curve, we need to choose the same ring again. It's a circle. That's all we need to make an oval. We'll just set the parameters to make it wider. So that means our height for the bottom and top are going to be 0. So it'll stay 50 millimeters. And then we need to add 6.5 millimeters. That's half of that 13 we talked about for the sides. That gives us 13 millimeters total wider than the height of our ring size builder. Okay. So let's go ahead and rename this. This is going to be our sweep path. And we'll rename our ring size builder while we're at it as well. Just right click and rename. This is going to be our bracelet size height. So that's what we changed to change our different sizes. If we change the height, the outline will always be 13 bigger, gives us different sizes. Okay, so we're also going to set up some other curves for cutting letters. So we're going to put some letters in our ring on both the outside and the inside of our ring size or our bracelet. So we're going to do another outline using the same technique. Use the ring size builder, another outline, and we want to determine how much. We're going to do the, let's rename this to the inside cut, tab. For the inside cut, we need it to be 0.5 millimeter inside the bracelet. So again, choose the sketch here, or the ring for the curve, and we're just going to make this 0.5 millimeter bigger than the original. That's going to give us a cut that's 0.5 millimeter inside of our ring, our bracelet. I keep saying ring because we're used to doing rings here. And then we add 0.5 millimeter to the width as well. So if we started at 6.5, we're just going to make this 7. And now you should see we have another outline that is 0.5 millimeter on each side bigger. That'll be the curve we use to cut our letters on the inside of our bracelet. Validate that. And we need to do one more for the outside. Now before we do that, I need to determine how wide are my bracelets going to be, or how thick they're going to be. So let's go ahead and set up our section. Make sure I got everything labeled here. We're going to go into a sketch in the front view here, and we're going to rename this sketch for our sweep sections. Okay, and we're going to do, I'm just going to do a simple rectangle shape for this demo. You can do any sections you want for the shape of your bracelets. I'm going to make it 6 by 2. So I'm going to make sure all my sections are 2 millimeters wide so that I can keep things consistent with my cuts. And I'll round it a little bit. Okay, so with that in mind, we know we want, this is going to be the top of our bracelet, we want 1/2 millimeter depth in our cuts. So again, simple math, we just take 1/2 millimeter from our total, which is 2. We need to add 1.5 for our outside cut outline. So keep that in mind. We're going to go back and set that up. So once again, select the ring size builder, ring outline, use that same ring size builder for the curve of it, and we're going to add 1.5 to each side. So again, keep in mind this was 6.5 originally, so that would be 8 millimeters total for the sides. And of course, we should see a next outline is now 1.5 bigger. Okay, and don't forget to label that. We've got our outside cut. Perfect, we're all set up. We're ready to start actually creating our bracelet, and then we'll add our lettering. I'm gonna go ahead and save this just in case. We've got Bracelet Builder. I'll do number 3 since it's the 3rd time I've built this today, just for practice. And we're ready to go. So we're gonna select our sweep path. That's why I labeled them. I can select it easily from the tree here. We're going to go Sweeping Wizard since it's a simple one path sweep. I'm going to go ahead and rename, no, I don't need to rename this, it's Basic Sweep. Choose your material, go to the second tab, add a section, and then use this hand to choose your section. So I set up my section as my sketch as sweep sections. If you want to have different bracelets from the same builder, just do different sections, and then you can swap those out right here, whatever you want, a different shape. It'll still stay parametric to your ring size builder. Otherwise, we validate, and we've got our simple sweep. And we'll save that and start setting up our lettering. So we've got lettering set up for both the outside of this bracelet and the inside, and we can do that from different angles based on which planes we choose. So let's start with a simple one. We're going to do lettering across the top outer part of our bracelet. So that would be just the default OXY plane. I'm going to hide my sketches here real quick, and we'll choose that plane and do a new sketch. And I'm going to set up my lettering with the text tool, and I'll just type in 3 design and set up your size. Basically, I'm doing 1/2 millimeter cuts into my bracelet. I want these letters to be about 1/2 millimeter thick. You want that ratio to be similar. You can always set up your letters first and then determine how deep you're gonna cut them based on that. But that looks about right for this. So we'll validate that. Select my letters and use the centering button down here to put it right in the middle, and then exit the sketch. Okay, I like to label things in here, so we're going to rename this outside top text. Okay, so now I know if I need to change the text on the outside top of my ring, maybe I'm going to put a name there and change it for each customer, things like that. So we'll put outside top text there, and we're ready to extrude. And go back to the solid module, extrusion, and just pull this through the bracelet. Validate that. To do the cut, we choose the solid and our outside cut outline here. And we're going to do a crop and punch. The crop and punch doesn't always work on lettering because it's a group of solids instead of a nice clean solid. If it doesn't work, undo that and then just do an extrusion using the outside cut and do a Boolean difference between the two. But crop and punch seems to be working nicely on this font. I used Arial Black, nice blocky letters. So we'll just do a crop using the outside cut. That's going to leave my letters 1/2 millimeter cut into the bracelet, and it matches the shape of our bracelet. Okay, so we're good to go there. I'm going to hide my sketches again, and we'll set up for the outside bottom. Now this is going to go from a different direction, so we can't just put in the OXY. We'll have to flip the letters around and rotate them and things like that. So instead, we're going to set up a plane based on that OXY. So we're going to go to the support section, do a custom plane. First thing we're going to do is make it parallel to the original plane, and I like to resize it so that I can recognize it as a custom plane really quickly. And then we just need to choose the orientation. So these letters right here where it says orientation of plane matches the direction we want it to be on the bottom of our piece. So it looks to be just a regular flip. And yes, that'll keep the orientation the same as I have with my letters up here. Actually, it's opposite since it's on the bottom side, but that's what I want. You can flip around different directions. Just make sure they're going the visual way you want them to go. Now we go ahead and validate that plane, and we'll select it and do our sketch in that new plane. So now we're looking at the bottom of our bracelet. Perfect. And for this, instead of doing text, I'm going to do a logo. You can use any sketches you want to cut these shapes in here. The only logo I really have is an old 3 Design logo. So we'll call this a throwback bracelet. It's an old school bracelet. So we're going to scale this down so it fits. It's already centered since that's the way it was created. So we're good to go there. It's a little thin, but it should work for this demo purpose. Keep that in mind when you're designing your logos, not to make it too thin. That little R there is not going to show up. And we do our, back here, we're going to do our labeling here. This time we're going to rename this sketch to outside bottom, and we'll say logo, since that's where we're going to put our logo. And we can change that out if, excuse me, change that out as needed. We're going to extrude that through the bracelet, and we're going to validate that. And same as before. Now we need to find our outline cut again. We used it in the last crop and punch. So if you expand that out, you can bring this back to the top of the tree by right-clicking and making a reference object, or we can just use it from the tree. So we'll select that and the solid and do another crop. Okay, check it, make sure it cut cleanly. If it did, great. If not, do the extrusion method. Okay. Now we're ready to Boolean these from our ring, our bracelet. I keep saying ring. Bracelet, subtract. And there we go. They're perfectly cut, 0.5 millimeter deep, matching the shape. So we're going to hide our section for sketches again, and now we're going to set up our inner lettering. And I want to do that from an angle. I want to put the year inside this lower right corner. So we're going to do another plane based on the default OXY plane, only this time we need to turn it. We'll leave it 45 degrees so that it's going towards the corner. We need to turn it facing the right corner. That looks to be -90 for the X angle. Perfect. Now we just need to change our orientation, and that looks to be a 90-degree turn. And yes, that's going the way we want. Again, I like to resize that so I can recognize it quickly. You can rename those as well, but this is fine. We're going to select this plane and do a new sketch. And we're going to place our text here. Do 2017. You know what? This is a throwback bracelet with the old logo. Let's say 2007. Take it back a few years. I'll use the same font and size, and don't forget to center it using the centering button. And exit, and we see it's perfectly angled to go into the corner. I'm going to relabel this as well, rename. This sketch is going to be our inside, and I'll say lower right. So I know that's the lower right corner. And you can use maybe 4 o'clock for the clock position. You can say that's the, what is that? You can use degrees. Whatever label you want to remember, that's going to be the lower corner. And that works for me. I'm going to select that font or text and extrude it through. Make sure we grab just the Z arrow, push it all the way through, and validate. And we're ready to cut that. So this time we're going to do inside cut. Select our extrusion, and instead of cropping, we want to keep the inside, so we're going to punch. So everything's opposite when you're doing the inside. Perfect. We're going to Boolean subtract that, And there's our inside. So now we can put lettering or change that so we always have something in the corner of our bracelet on the inside. So just setting up some different examples for you. Now you can do the same thing if you want to put more cutouts on the corners on the outside or more on the inside. Set up as many planes as you need for your builder so it does what you want it to do. I'm gonna hide my sketches again. And now we'll do some testing to make sure our parametrics are working. Our history is all built correctly. So I'm going to save first. We go through our history here. Your bracelet size height, your bracelet builder is down here in the section for sketches if you have it organized this way. I'm going to double click that. And all we have to do is change to the height based on our little chart here. If I want to go large, we're going to change the height to 60. It'll still be 13 millimeters wider. So we just change that diameter to 60. We validate and recompute. Was it already 60? Did I not change anything? Oh, I didn't type 60, I typed 58. Change that to 60, validate. Now we see that we need to recalculate all of our curves and our cuts. So we just hit recompute. Give that a second. Okay, so let's do some troubleshooting here. What happened? Okay, so for one thing, our bottom letters didn't cut. I didn't extrude them enough. The next thing is, what really happened here? Our sweep. Oh, you know, we probably have a bad Boolean because my letter is going through there. So I did that on purpose. I didn't pull my bottom logo through far enough to do the cut properly, so that I can go back and show you what happens here. So let's go back to the history. If we go, let's right click and do the history this way. Create it on. There's our Boolean. There's our crop and punch number 2 where we did the bottom logo. If we take a look at this extrusion, you see it's not going through. So you want to do these extrusions exaggerated, way out here, to make sure no matter what size you choose, it'll always be overlapping properly. So let's validate that and recompute and see if that fixes our issue there. And yes, that's exactly what the problem was. It was a bad Boolean because our bottom letters weren't cut properly or overlapping properly through the bracelet. So when you're setting yours up, be careful, keep that in mind. Make sure your extrusions go way through. It doesn't matter how far out here you go. Then way you can do any size bracelet and it'll always overlap. So that's it. Let's test it one more time. We'll do bracelet size height. Let's go to a medium size, which is 55 millimeters. Tab and validate. See that all this needs recomputing. Now we should have no problems updating it. Check all of our cuts. Perfect. So now that we've tested, go ahead and save this, export it as a symbol with history, and now you have your very own bracelet builder that you can have in your library at all times. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you next time.